a cruise to Europe is definitely going to be different than a Caribbean cruise, but when you try Europe for the first time, you know what? Sometimes it ends up being totally different. But how different is going on a cruise to Europe compared to maybe a land vacation, and what kind of concerns might you have? Today, we've got why Jenna's European cruise wasn't what she expected. Up next.
Hey everyone, it's Jenna from Royal Caribbean Blog. If you don't know me, I am this channel's YouTube video editor, and I am taking over this channel from Matt this week as he's probably having a little too much fun on his Wonder of the Seas cruise. Today we're going to discuss why my European cruise I took with Royal Caribbean this year wasn't exactly what I expected. When I boarded a flight for Europe this year en route to my first European cruise, I was honestly doubtful a cruise would be the best way to travel Europe. Although I was excited to cruise around Europe, I didn't have the highest expectations that this would be better than a land-based vacation. Most of my concerns revolved around only having 8 hours to spend in these amazing destinations, spending more time on the cruise ship than in port, and navigating around thousands of other passengers in busy ports. I thought that the drawbacks would outweigh the benefits. But everything is worth a try, and the moment I stepped foot in my first European cruise port, I realized my concerns were totally unnecessary. My European cruise experience was not at all what I initially expected, and it quickly became my favorite destination to cruise in the world. Here's why. Before I worked for Royal Caribbean Blog, most of my travel was done at a slower pace. I would regularly spend a few months living or traveling in different countries, which gave me time to truly soak in a region's culture, cuisine, and language. To be fair, there's no doubt that traveling slowly allows you to gain a better understanding of a place compared to a cruise. I certainly experienced more of Puerto Rico on my 2-week vacation, for example, compared to my 8-hour port day. That being said, even though I still love traveling slowly, I've grown to appreciate the more fast-paced nature of traveling via cruise ship. I've been pleasantly surprised by how much you can experience in just a few hours on a port day, and visiting several destinations on one cruise gives you a small taste of places you can visit on a longer, land-based vacation. So while planning my Royal Caribbean cruise to Europe, I wanted to keep an open mind, remembering that even though this wouldn't be the slow travel type of vacation I would normally take to Europe, the cruise would come with its own set of benefits. Let's take a look at the expectations versus realities I encountered on my European cruise experience. My first expectation was that Europe would be better on a land-based vacation. Many of the continent's most popular cities are not even located along the coast, so I was pretty skeptical of cruising as a way to see Europe. Spending only 8 hours in Rome or 4 hours in Paris seemed pretty crazy to me, as these cities easily require several days. I honestly didn't feel like spending such a short amount of time in these places would do them any justice. Therefore, I looked for cruise itineraries that had little travel time from port to city. This can vary drastically based on port. I did not want to spend hours in transit on port days, as I know I would feel exhausted. Because of this, I ended up picking 2 itineraries in 2 very different regions of Europe. The first was a 7-night Spain and France cruise, and the second, a 7-night Greek and Adriatic cruise. Despite selecting itineraries visiting both touristy and lesser-known destinations, I couldn't help but remain skeptical of whether or not this would be the best way to see Europe. Life is all about realizing that some expectations are not always true, and my reality I encountered was that cruising Europe can be a perfect way to see certain ports. On my cruises, I found that many ports were better to visit via cruise ship than independently. While cruising around Greece, for example, it was hard to miss the crowds of exhausted-looking tourists embarking and disembarking ferries. Getting around the Greek Isles requires traveling via boat or constantly flying from island to island. Traveling via cruise ship meant I could travel to several islands without booking separate ferries. That's not even mentioning that these ferries would be way less comfortable than my Royal Caribbean ship. On 2 7-night cruises, I visited 9 ports in 5 countries. I could never have done this on a land-based trip in the same amount of time. Catching trains, buses, and ferries from destination to destination would have been exhausting. Being on a cruise ship meant we traveled when I was eating dinner, catching a show, or sleeping. It was so nice and refreshing to not have to worry about transportation logistics, which is often a huge pain when taking a land-based vacation. My next expectation was that every port would be a tourist trap. Thousands of passengers disembarking from multiple cruise ships in port each day seemed like it would be the exact opposite of what I was looking for in a vacation. While I don't mind visiting tourist sites, I much prefer traveling to small towns where I can truly experience a region's culture. Because of this, I was worried that each cruise port would be way too busy and I would spend the whole day in huge crowds, unable to discover even a hint of local culture. And just like before, my reality was not in line with my expectations. I realized that all of the ports, even the touristy spots, offered authentic experiences. While walking around some of these small cruise ports, such as Bilbao or A Coruña in Spain or La Rochelle, France, I was surprised by how local the city felt. After so many Caribbean cruises filled with ports built specifically for tourists, and far too many Senior Frog locations, in my opinion, it was refreshing to feel like I was having a more genuine travel experience. I didn't have to worry about navigating huge crowds, worrying about pickpockets, and getting scammed into paying higher prices. My Greek and Adriatic cruise was definitely more touristy than my Spain and France sailing, but I never found the crowds unbearable. Most days I was up and awake and in port by about 8 a.m., and there were virtually no crowds anywhere. Honestly, I had the lowest expectations for Mykonos, Greece after realizing how touristy the island could be, but this ended up being one of my favorite ports I visited all summer. Even though there were 3 ships in port the day we visited, we disembarked the ship early and we were able to explore without a ton of crowds. While the island certainly got busier in the afternoon, it wasn't hard to escape the crowds by walking further away from the main streets. Another expectation is that I wouldn't be able to taste local cuisine on my European cruise. Don't get me wrong, I love dining on a Royal Caribbean cruise, but eating Greek salad on the ship did not seem as appealing as eating Greek salad at an oceanfront restaurant in Crete. The reality, though, was that I had amazing cuisine every port day. When cruising, you have to make a decision of whether you want to spend money on food in port or head back to the ship for the meals you already paid for in your cruise fare. Even though I could technically get free food on board, I made a point to budget roughly $20 for food in port each day. I couldn't imagine cruising to Greece and not trying moussaka, visiting Spain and not ordering wine, and exploring Italy without eating fresh pasta. I ended up having some of the best meals I've ever had in my life on my European cruise. From spanakopita in Mykonos to tapas in Bilbao, I loved the variety of cuisine I could enjoy when visiting a new port each day. And now I want to talk about 2 of the major benefits I realized about cruising Europe. The first is that you only have to unpack once. Whenever I picture a European vacation, I do picture beautiful squares, pretty sunsets, outdoor dinners, and historic monuments. But what I always forget about is how terrible it is to carry luggage from place to place while traveling through Europe. Constantly unpacking and packing my bags gets old quickly. It was beyond freeing to be able to disembark the cruise ship at a new port with only a few items in our day pack. It certainly spoiled us, and we struggled immensely once off the ship and traveling on our own after the cruise. This was one of the biggest benefits of traveling Europe for me. The second benefit of cruising to Europe is the fantastic value. Cruises, in my opinion, always offer a great value for a vacation, and I found this to be especially true in Europe. My 7-night cruise to Greece, for example, was priced at only $1,300 for 2 guests in an interior stateroom. This also included daily gratuities, and brought the daily cost to only $92 per person per night. Considering this price included accommodation, food, and transportation to several different ports, I thought it offered an unbeatable price compared to doing this itinerary on a land-based vacation. So, do I prefer traveling via cruise ship to Europe or through land-based vacations? While I was initially concerned cruising would not be a nice way to travel Europe, it quickly became my favorite region to cruise in the world. Each port offered so much history, culture, and activities to discover, from dining at outdoor cafes to hiking along gorgeous coastal paths. Every day offered authentic, diverse experiences. I sometimes find Caribbean cruise ports way too touristy, and it can be difficult to find local culture in between tourist restaurants and souvenir shops. While I'll take lying on a pristine white sand beach over working in the office any day, I found that a European cruise fits my travel style better. I have to say that I'm still a bit skeptical that a Western Mediterranean cruise would be worth it compared to traveling that region on a land-based vacation. It's still hard for me to justify spending 1 to 2 hours in transit each way to visit cities like Rome and Florence just to spend only a few hours in the city. I think I'll just have to plan another European cruise to visit and see for myself. Will I stop planning land-based vacations in Europe? Definitely not. I still love traveling slowly, not only in Europe, but anywhere in the world, and it offers a way to immerse myself in new cultures that is impossible to do on a cruise. I recently spent 2 weeks traveling Portugal and Spain by bicycle, and it doesn't really get much slower than that. So while I'll certainly still plan land-based vacations in Europe for more in-depth travel, I'm already looking forward to discovering more coastal destinations in Europe via cruise ship. Norway, Canary Islands, Sicily, Turkey, Iceland? Count me in.
Let me know in the comments below what your European cruise experience was like and how it matches up with Jenna, and what recommendations do you have for anybody taking their first European cruise. I am looking forward to seeing those comments down there. And while you're down below this video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. That way, YouTube lets you know we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. We'll talk again real soon.